Hello, welcome back. This is a big issue, the final lap of the program. Franklin Kujo, Dr. Sharif Mahama, and Dr. Kabiru Mahama are my guests here. A number of things we've been discussing. The last lap, we focused on the National Service scandal, the ghost names and all of that, as mentioned by the President, and also the dismissal or so-called revocation of appointments of persons employed into the public sector after December 7. Let's start off with that. Frankly, let me start off with you. You deal with a lot of public sector reform issues, etc. People have been employed into the public sector, albeit after December 7. A new government comes and asks them to go home. Is that proper? How should we be looking at that?
Well, to be fair, I seriously think that each institution that undertook this recruitment, we need to ask questions. What was the plan? Was there a plan to increase the workforce by a certain date? We need to know what really was the guiding, should I call it the guidelines or the guiding post for these recruitment. I think that's where we should start from. Otherwise, if it was just piling people and putting them there, then there's a real challenge. So I think, for me, everything we're going to ask ourselves, what is the staff strength? What are the, should I call it, the numbers that are optimal that particular institution needs? And whether really there was a plan to employ these number of people. And I think it's all part of the auditing that must be done. Otherwise, it will be difficult for me to determine whether these are MPP people. And the other question I've been asking myself, if indeed people have been employed and they've been employed properly, why are we worried that, anyway, that's why we should actually be worried that a new administration has come in and decided that they were going to do away with all the things. So for me, I think we should go back to basically what guidelines there are within that service or the entire public service, whether it was followed, and whether there were gaps to actually fill. But that's another thing. You don't want to. You want to reduce the bureaucracy. So you don't want to just employ people. So let's go back and ask: all these people who have been appointed, what role were they performing? What work actually were they supposed to do? Was it part of the plan? If it is not, then like Musk will ask you, what did you do last week? Tell us what you are doing here. And essentially, is it in sync with the overall growth of that particular institution? And that's another thing we should be talking about, public sector reform. It's just too difficult. I don't know how all of a sudden people are recruited. If before this November, I'll probably have no problem with it. But between December 7th and January, I think in all fairness, it will be really difficult to justify those ones. But you probably don't know. It's all part of a snail, bureaucracies. They probably have the numbers they needed to do, and somebody sat on it, forgot, realized, hey, we are out of power. So fix these people. It's natural. So we need to go back and look, each of them. Did they have the right qualifications? Did that institution actually need those people? It's the only way we can solve this. Otherwise, anything else I would suggest, it's just hot air, because it will be difficult for me to rationalize this.
Prof.
It's quite interesting.
Yes. So Ghanaians employed.
Kabiru, in time past, my brother, in time past, could you say you're not guilty of sending people or instrumental in sending NDC folks home who were employed? I'm not justifying. I'm just asking.
Another question is, so NDC people.
Yeah.
You said our people.
Yeah, he said people. No. What I'm going to ask is, what I'm going to ask is, okay. So, but in the past, were you instrumental in playing a role in sending people's home?
So this question,
as far as employment is concerned,
this question is a direct no. There's no single person who can bring single evidence of his appointment terminated as a result of the change of government. The only reference people refer to is the Minister of Health, direction by the former minister, that those without the 2017 batch had no financial clearance.
Anaba, who was head of Ridge Hospital, what took him home?
No, Anaba.
Yes.
Anaba was a political appointee. He was appointed as a CEO of Ridge Hospital.
How is CEO of a Ridge Hospital a political appointee?
No, let us not mix apples. Let us make. It was after that the Supreme Court ruled.
This is the public
It was
sector
after that the
issue.
Supreme Court
this is
ruled.
a public.
And the best issue, if you are appointed as a CEO of a public institution like Ridge Hospital, he was not a staff. I know Anaba was operating his private hospital in Tamale before that appointment.
So what is wrong with that?
No, I'm just saying. So what is wrong with him operating?
Was he qualified?
No, the point is that
was he qualified to hold that role?
CEO's appointments are political appointments.
Says who? By what?
No.
But was he qualified?
Was he qualified?
The president appoints.
That is a public hospital. So whoever the president appoints. No, whoever the president appoints.
Dr. Sheriff.
No, whoever the president appoints.
Let us not mix them. Then we are saying
He's making. It's
I'm
actually telling the truth. Really.
The truth is that CEOs are political appointees.
So CEOs like any other
CEOs like any. Well, no one is having issue that you went and sacked SIC boss. We are not raising issue with it. No one is raising issue with NSS. No one is raising issue with the institution you are sacking people in the place.
So we should look at.
But we are looking at those employed by the public and civil service.
Yes, we're going to come to that.
Okay. And I'm saying that there's no single person on record that was sacked by the MPP government in those categories. That's the point I'm making.
No, but when you came in, letters were issued to the effect.
The fact is that there were many people in the public service who were not political. They were just doing their
jobs, and
they were issued termination letters to go home.
And I'm saying that who?
There are a number of them.
And I'm saying that give example of one.
There are 1,001 of them.
No, I'm saying that give example of one. The only incident they reference is the Minister of Health. But as we speak today, even the MPP government end up recruiting every single person and nurse. Those were the areas. We never left any area in the NDC regime. So that was the only reference they said. That the Minister for Health then asked that, those 1,500 or 15,000 people, there were no financial clearance for them, so they should suspend. They only even said that the recruitment should be suspended. That's the only reference in all this discussion. They've not been able to provide one single evidence.
The examples abound.
Yeah, the National Service Secretariat,
National Service Secretariat. National Service Secretariat. It was a corruption scandal. Let me mix them.
Wait.
So corruption scandal hit National Service Secretariat, and every single person in that particular cohort was asked to go.
No, that's different. These are different. So I mean, if you
take this
position, you will be surprised.
You see why the public services.
No, give me the
figure.
Employ people.
I know personally people who were just asked to go home because.
And I'm saying that give example of that person.
You don't need to mention names.
Even letters. I can give you letters of those people. I can give you letters of, but just
you want me to produce letters on the program, right?
No, for the purpose of this discussion, this discussion has gone on for almost 2-3 weeks. So one should have been kind and good enough.
In fact, we've seen letters even on social media. Not even one single. Who now heads the place?
No, it wasn't as so. That's not the point.
No, he wasn't a political person at the time.
No. He was not a political person, but there was an issue. There was an issue of insubordination. Let us not be mixing apples.
What was it?
Opoku had issue with his CEO. He wasn't the only NDC person in that institution.
And who advocated of another?
You see, that's what I'm saying.
Was there a committee?
I know of a brother who was sacked at GRA. I don't equate it to political sacking because he had issue with management. He went through what they thought that the proper thing is to sack the person, and they sacked the person.
So that's what happened.
That is different from mass.
No, was that what happened in
mass dismissal of people in GRA, in Ghana Health, Water Service, in Ghana Civil Aviation, everywhere.
The other point
is different.
See, the other point is you've been there. You've not made plans. There's no apparent plan to employ people. Just after I lose an election, a new government is about to come. Everything new, wanting to know what the public sector you can't.
No, before you go on that,
all of a sudden you employ people.
No, let me be candid. Every single person that was a knee-jerk recruitment after the NPP had lost an election was not done in good faith, and every government has a right to question it. That's my position. But I'm saying that we should not lump set cases with people.
So there should be a review.
No, there should be a review.
Those ones that started long before processes started long before.
Some people also had their process started. They went through aptitude tests. They went through even way before December. So when the letter is given in December, that's fair.
That's fair.
But the whole scale
so indeed, the health minister,
people is what
the health minister had cause.
See why I say it's misleading?
Yeah, the health minister has said that they will look at it in that sense.
Why I say this issue is misleading is that there was a clear directive from the chief of staff. What did the directive read? It says that from a certain cut-off period, which is after, right? So whatever is being dealt with,
are doing outside that.
No, if anyone is doing, deal with that. But the chief of staff issued a directive, and the clear directive of the chief of staff is what holds.
So
anything coming from the grapevine ought to be dealt with differently.
How about if the process started with
that's what coming. So what the chief of staff did was a very responsible thing to do. The timing itself is questionable, but he's called for an audit of these recruitment processes.
So the audit is good.
The audit is that's what goes in.
Better.
Right. So you look at the audit to say, okay, was due process full? It takes time to have an audit. Was this job advertised? If yes, was there need for it? Was there financial clearance for it? Right? Is it a fit for purpose role?
Yeah.
Is it analogous to what is being done? Right, so there are terms of reference to what the chief of staff has directed.
But do we know the number? Because so far nobody's put up the number.
But that is what he calls the audit would reveal the number. So this is a statement he went out with, a very responsible statement at that. So let's be guided by the fact that the chief of staff, in his capacity as chief of staff, has issued a statement, a clear directive, calling for this. So if we're having any engagement outside the remit of the directive of the chief of staff, that is neither here nor there.
Yeah. So, but
that is grapevine.
It's not grapevine. It goes to the abuse of that directive.
Yes.
That I cannot hold the chief of staff ransom. I cannot hold the chief of staff ransom. I cannot hold the chief of staff ransom for a directive he has given, and people are going outside. But once people are doing that,
so what is the evidence
for them to order?
No, for instance, at NIP, NIP, every single person who was there working with Kofi Ofosu-Kwakye has been sent home.
But the reason, that's a peculiar case.
Let me give it. I'll give you the response.
Look, yes, and that's a peculiar case.
Reason being that.
Kofi's not worried about it.
Reason being that.
That is a peculiar case.
Reason being that they were paid
nothing to do with that.
IGF. They were not paid. They were not paid from.
They were being paid
consolidated fund.
Apparently, they were. Of course, the real issue is that those guys, as I've heard from Kofi himself, that those guys were never regular because it's a World Bank project housed at the presidency, so they couldn't be put on salary. They were getting allowances, so it was going to be difficult to regularize them. But his colleagues accused him of not regularizing them. I don't think the two are the same. So I put up a post against that as well until I got sufficient information, even from Kofi himself, that it's not a deliberate thing the NDC guy was doing, and that he's right. He wants to. Because there's even no money to pay them anyway. I said they should even collapse that NEIP into all the various existing youth enterprises.
As we are just speaking, appointment dated 13 February 2025.
13 February?
Yes.
No. 2024.
2024. No, sorry. I got that. 3rd December. 3rd December, before the elections, has been revoked.
But what was due process?
By a letter. That's what I'm saying that. That is where you need.
The cut-off was
yes, and this is GRA. The appointment was on 3rd December. The issue is that wait and do the audit.
So who did?
Look, the chief of staff
issued this.
Is a GRA. The GRA boss. Our revocation appointment. I write in reference to offer of your appointment made in December 2024.
Signed off by who?
Pursuant to directive received from the chief of staff, a letter dated 10 February 2025, the offer of appointment has been revoked.
No, that's
Thank
wrong.
you.
That's wrong.
Your favor, signed by Amma Rodolph.
Was it in reference to the chief of staff? Was it
the reference to the chief of staff directive?
Okay, but the chief of staff directive
doesn't cover that. So that's the point I'm making.
So that's a person.
So when we are discussing them because people are taking advantage of the directive. And also, the directive was not that. I'm not sure the directive was that revoke the appointment. The directive was that you can suspend them and investigate.
Yeah, exactly.
But people have, on the basis of directive, revoking appointments.
So you can.
So that is the core of the problem.
Yeah.
So you are not blaming the chief of staff, but you are also blaming the government because those doing it are part of the government. those issuing those revocation are CEOs appointed by the government.
No, but
in complete
this is not appointed by the government.
In flagrant disrespect of the order of the chief.
We should find
So I think we should deal with them.
On a case-by-case basis.
And also,
rather than
the chief of staff by
the
now
holistic case.
should have come to say that, considering the information, the avalanche of information we have received, okay,
To clarify his order.
i.e. different mass dismissal of people from different, I direct that wasn't my order. Please reinstate everyone and do the investigation.
No.
But if the chief of staff is quiet,
This is
if the chief of staff is quiet and the government is quiet, it means that
he has given his directive. If it affects you, as I speak to you, several appeals, right, that having even in previous administrations have come to the desk of the chief of staff. He calls the HR, puts up a committee, calls the CEO or whoever is acting in charge. They look into it, regardless of government. If you have a merit, you are reinstated. So if this is even happening afresh or anew, if they have any case, they should petition. It will be looked at. So you see, when directive comes, administration is a very straightforward thing, and you have to be careful as to how, when you issue a directive, you want to go back and forth on issues. The directive is clear. So if it has affected you outside the scope of the directive, petition. That will be dealt with. You don't expect to put an onus on the chief of staff to come out with another statement. Let me give you a classic example of a business friend of mine who called in distress yesterday. He was like, there are a bunch of people moving around Roman Ridge, moving into government bungalows, ejecting people, right? And anyone developing a facility close by, worrying them. So I called it the NS boss to ask that, are you aware of this? And said, these are a bunch of criminals. But someone out there could interpret it as a government action because there's a party in power. But the government has absolutely nothing to do with that whatsoever. That letter from GRA is not signed by a commissioner appointed by the president whatsoever. It's coming from a
reference directive.
So, but yeah, if he references it, and that's what I'm saying. If he references it and it has an issue, petition.
Because clearly it goes outside of the scope.
But look at it. It goes outside the scope of what the chief of staff does. But, there are a list of items. For all you know, undue process was followed in that recruitment process. And that's what was being activated. But they could just... But I know that there could be an element of abuse. No, this is not rationalization. There could be an element of abuse. And abusing it. That is not to say there's no...
Let's spend the next 5 minutes on the NSA thing.
Yeah, but as I said, it's...
What is your understanding of the NSA?
You deal with Kabiru when you
but you have uncovered
it. So the NSA issue did not start in this regime. I know on the eve of the elections, there were some reports. Was it the Media Foundation? They did some way before this government was ushered in. And
this government meaning what?
Mean the current NDC government.
Yeah.
I know on the eve, I had a privileged conversation. A privileged conversation, someone raising that matter with the vice president. And I was in that meeting. Just on the eve was some few days to the elections. It was privileged. And the measure they needed to take to avert that, whether they were right or so, the government needed to investigate and take actions. That was there. For me, I will not sit down here because NSS it's been a systematic, or it's been over the years, every single regime, people siphon state resources using the National Service Authority. People have been prosecuted. We don't know the state of those prosecutions. Nothing has been retrieved from them. And now it is happening now again. I remember, and I speak of it from also some bit of authority. I have served under the National Service Authority. In fact, as a year I was doing the National Service, I was the National President of National Service Personnel Association, NASPA.
You're a big man.
And I had served with Mr. Kwabenu, Vincent, right? I'm exposed a bit to the workings of the National Service Authority. And people are taking advantage of the vulnerabilities of the system, the lack of definite numbers in the National Service Scheme, and bloating the numbers, using mushrooms institutions that are not even accredited to siphon resources from the state. I think that the law must take its fullest course in this matter. People found culpable must be made to face the law. But we must put in system to avert some of this, because it's been happening for over 10 years. What are we doing so wrong that we are not able to? We introduced the digitization. Our expectation was that every single person would be linked to the person Ghana card, said that you will not have double entries. But that, it is also solving part of the problem. The human discretion is still there. Someone, they can get Ghana card for someone who is not even a student. So the digitization of the system with the Ghana card is part of the solution, but it is not holistic or fully the solution. We need to remove the human element. We need to make sure that National Accountant and Control General deal institution directly with the universities so that they can cross-check against the list presented by the National Service Authority. So if the controller have a desk, for instance, be responsible for auditing claims, the institution can write to the very institution and let's have the list of students who are graduating. So that if the institution is not recognized, no funds will be released for such a person. That is one way I think there are not enough checks and balances. That is actually causing some of these things. And I think it's unfortunate. The people...
The president said 50... I mean, it was said that the persons were going to be getting about 50 million cedis a month.
That is possible. That is possible. And I think that maybe because it was at one time, they want to have a bite.
But the money suspended. It's a question I always ask. Did people actually...
I don't know how they
probably made an estimation based from the period to now. Maybe some of it.
How do you actually get paid? Because to be paid, you have to
when they did the audit.
Don't you have to do some things?
I know that there are biometric features and all of that.
So that's why maybe it's a very complicated scheme.
Very complicated.
And we need to get to the bottom of it.
Well, it's an internal job.
Yes, and the same people to give the authorization.
It's an internal job.
So
it's an internal job, so you can understand how it's being done. But you see, I think that this should just set the base not just to NSA, other agencies. For me, NAPCO is one of the interesting agencies.
But NAPCO doesn't exist anymore.
No, it doesn't exist. But a real audit of it, go back to the audit. I'm not looking at the existence of it.
But there were 100,000 people.
Yeah, with these ghost names issues.
You know what I think we should...
NAPCO has been vetted, the accounts have been audited.
Why are you putting up the Why are you acting uncomfortable with NAPCO?
On the wild goose.
It's not red herrings. You see, when you have information as to how a certain agency was run, and you see similar incident happen, it only takes public responsibility to call for that to happen.
Very well.
So I hope that is not the case of dry bones being mentioned, but it is something that I'm hoping that it could be looked into.
Very well.
But you see, the NSA issue, right? For me, we are in government, and as responsible as we are, lifestyle is an issue.
Lifestyle audit.
No, when I say you can call it lifestyle audit. You also, I don't know how to, the Arabian style, Queen style of the head of the NSA. And none of you ever questioned or wanted to question how it was being fueled.
So, but if I see your cheeks growing because...
No, it's not about cheeks growing. Frankly, you're going extreme. But no, it's not like where I'm coming in. No. Let's not trivialize this. Let's not trivialize this.
We're running out of time.
Let's not trivialize this, right? I mean, it became public knowledge, right, as the kind of wristwatches that she was in town. And
don't go about
wristwatches. Don't.
The Chilean finance minister was arrested.
Joan Mokhtar has changed the back she's holding.
Don't be trivialized. I mean, come on.
Go to wristwatch.
No. The only way we should be
please don't do
public
that.
sector reform is important, and I think we should rationalize all these institutions. National Service, YEA, GEA, all these youth things must be collapsed into one entity and be properly controlled. We are creating too many of them and wasting money too much. So I think that's the only thing I can say for that.
Well, I mean, but the military training, at least, proposed by President Mahama, may bring a sense of discipline to an extent and a psychological mindset.
Establishing the national service provider for military training. It was supposed to be even 2 years, but due to resources constraint, government of Sudan has weathered it down.
Countries that use that actually, they have a purpose.
So that is it. But there was also a misrepresentation by the president on the ESLA, the president stated that
so
some 450 billion is corrected when some 750 billion is the debt. But ESLA is not for only payment of energy sector debt. It is for public lighting, it's for rural electrification system, it's for roads. So all this put together. And mind you, fuel and generation are the two major components of the energy sector debt. Fuel alone costs us about 70 million a month. Even if you do on the back of the envelope calculation of $8, I mean 8 Ghana cedis to $1, you are going to spend more than the 450 billion that he said it is in the account. So that has to be noted.
So this is how we conclude today's edition of the program. Thanks so much for doing the viewing and the listening. Franklin was in studio today. I must put that on record once again. Have a good afternoon.